Well, Patrice, it's good to see you after all these years. I think the last time we saw each other was in Toastmasters, maybe a decade ago.
That sounds like it.
Um, so thank you, first of all, for helping with my project. I was wondering if you could say a little bit about yourself, what you're up to and the things that interest you and that type of thing.
Well, right now I'm a infrastructure technology analyst slash architect. I'm doing a lot of architectural diagrams for the state of Texas, TCEQ, so Texas Commission on Environmental Quality. And of course, I get to learn a lot of new things, especially with our resources and things in that order. That's why this is very interesting to me, because I found out that on the moon, they say there's water on the moon, which means there's also certain minerals such as maybe gold, silver, mercury, things in that order. Well, I'm with the state, I'm dealing with a lot of these resources and the lab testings and things on that order through my diagrams. So it all kind of coincides, and I was excited when you said something about wanting to interview me.
Are you still in Toastmasters?
I am. I certainly am. I'm a member of Ostentatious, and I really enjoy it. I'm planning on doing some judging. I've already committed to a couple of clubs to do some judging for their club contests, so I'm really looking forward to that. I don't
That
think I'm going to compete at all, but I'll judge.
it's a tough job, especially a lot of those Toastmasters are really good. Trying to choose between them is
Yes,
difficult.
yes, very. They're just some of them are just amazing.
Well, when did you find out that we were planning to send astronauts back to the moon in 2024?
Well, I never really knew about the date, but it's been a while that I've heard that they were constantly talking about it and looking for the funds, things in that order. But I never really knew when the date was going, if there was going to be an actual date or if it was some type of suggested date. But I know they've been talking about it for quite a while, especially having the first woman on the moon.
And I mean, NASA's done a lot to kind of promote that 2024 date on their social media, on NASA TV and press releases. Even made it into the State of the Union address. Of course, thousands of other things made it into that address as well. But what do you think it would take for more people to be aware of it?
I think advertising through social media, because right now there's this company. It's called Trade Desk, and they've been doing really well. But how they're making their money is they do the social media advertising. So I think a company like that, talking to them and saying, hey, look, can you start promoting this type of advertising? It's like a big billboard. You're out there on Facebook, and all of a sudden you get those different advertisement pop-ups, in between your different messages and things. And I think it should be little pop-ups about, are you excited about space travel? Hey, we're going to the moon. You want to hear more about it? Click here, something on that order.
So what do you think about us sending astronauts back to the moon? Good idea, bad idea?
I think it's fantastic. I think we should be joining with other countries, such as with the space station, with Russia and China, anyone who has a space program, so that we can all kind of get together. And if we do find, like certain minerals of value, then it goes into a special international fund for increased space travel. It doesn't get divided out or spent by certain people or something on that order. But I think the more that we explore the moon, the more chances that people will be, just regular people like you and I, would be interested in maybe going to the moon. But then again, we need strict guidelines, such as no one with a disease or illness would be, allowed to travel. And you certainly wouldn't be allowed to spread anybody's ashes on the moon, because that could cause contamination. But, it's just things like that. But I think the more that we explore it, and the idea of building a space, like a station on the moon, a space station on the moon, and you could go outside through tunnels, and you could walk around and explore. not like the space station up in space. You go out, you have to be tethered, and you're afraid you're going to fly away. At least you have some chance of staying put and not taking off too far. But I just think you could just have all these tunnels above ground and underground, and you'd have so much freedom to just go out and explore and do things. And especially all these scientists and geologists. I mean, I think it'd be fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like there'll be a lot to discover. I mean, in the space station, it's just in free fall around the Earth, and other
Yes.
than having the weightlessness, there's really not much you get out of the space station. But the moon has, you know, the history of the meteor impacts
Mhm.
over the course of the past billion years or so, a record of our sun and how it's been changing over time,
Yes.
the minerals and lots of other stuff. So we might actually be able to mine some of those resources and make something out of it too.
Yes.
Mm.
And then you could also monitor the Earth from the moon, the Earth's atmosphere, and see how that's changing or how certain things seem to be affecting the Earth's atmosphere, from a faraway location. And I think that would be a huge help.
Yeah, being able to observe the Earth environment from a different point of view would be really good. And there's been talk about building a radio telescope on the far side of the moon. The moon would act like a shield of all the noise that we generate down here, so it'd be a lot easier to kind of make observations from
Oh,
afar. It's kind of neat
yes,
idea.
really. And then you wouldn't have the all the light interference either that we have down here.
There's many people that think that um, spending money to send astronauts to the moon is a waste of money and resources, and that those would be better spent on global climate change or poverty or the pandemic, things like that. I was wondering, how do you strike that balance between kind of doing these things that are kind of futuristic and visionary versus some things that are more immediate and pressing?
Well, our whole system and balance has been based on inventions and moving forward. You can't go forward if you're constantly looking in the rearview mirror. So you can't leave things stagnant. You have to constantly be open to change. Now, of course, you have a very large amount of people that don't like change, they hate change, and they're going to be 100% against it. But we really need to find a way to promote change, and change is through exploration. And if there wasn't change, I mean, we'd still be washing on a washboard or ringer washers or something on that order. And, the internet wouldn't have been developed. And look how much the internet has changed life. We could use that as an example, because even as far as uh, open communication, and I think the internet had a lot to do with breaking down problems with racism and prejudice, because people got to know each other. Now, recently, we've taken some steps backwards, but I think we can use the internet again to, promote, better living quality among people. So the more we add change, the more we explore and try new things, the better it's going to be for everyone. And I think that's the way we promote it.
Yeah, I mean that having to go to a completely different environment and figuring out how to live makes you reconsider everything, and maybe that offers some benefit to us.
Especially if we have all the different countries that have space exploration, if we have them all going to the moon and all working together for a common cause. And it's just going to say, hey, wow, we can work really well with with Russians and Chinese and whoever else has has the space program. And it may just put a whole different light that it's just one big organization of people. It doesn't matter about color, race, shape, or anything of that order. Ethics.
Yeah, it's a challenge, and there's a lot of concern that the very first countries and groups of people that actually go to the moon will be setting the rules, and will be able to kind of um, control that resource. And NASA's planning to put people on the moon in 2024. Probably won't happen in 2024, maybe 2026 or so. China is planning to put people on the moon in the early 2030s. Russia has been talking about it. Uh, But then you have all these other countries who don't have space programs but still have an interest in
Yes.
maybe preserving their spot for later on. How do we like balance the people that can go there now and are making that investment versus the people that aren't making the investment but maybe have a legitimate right to preserve a spot for them?
By establishing something similar to the United Nations. And the United Nations pretty much encompasses a lot. Well, I'm not going to, it's certainly not all countries, but a very large amount of countries. So anyone who has interest, any country that has interest in the space program, they would be involved in this huge new committee type international committee, and they'd have a certain amount, of say and things in that order. No, they might not be in a financial way that they can actually, contribute financially, but they could contribute in other ways. And, it's just supply a lot of information or even supply some resources, or they could supply some scientists, astronauts, things in that order. But I think we need to start by organizing a huge committee of people from countries that are truly interested in the space program.
Yeah, and you'd be happy to know that NASA is doing it with a group of other countries, so they're not going alone. Uh,
That's good.
Canada made the robotic arm for the space shuttle, and
Mhm.
then they made a robotic arm for the International Space Station. And as part of the Artemis program, which is the program that NASA's talking about going to the moon with, they're going to contribute a robotic arm to this lunar space station called the Gateway.
Yes.
And one of their astronauts will be on the Artemis 2 mission, which would be the first Canadian to actually fly around the moon.
Wow.
So that's kind of
That's
so
great.
they gave an arm for that.
Well, just like the wind turbines that you see, I mean those parts come from all different countries. I mean, one country, I think it's Germany, like makes the motor, and China makes the blade, and I mean it's a combination of all these different countries making, producing, more wind basically for energy.
Yeah, I mean our supply chains are global. I
Yes.
mean it's uh, it's amazing. And Japan is committed to providing transportation on the moon, like a little, they're doing some type of thing, I believe it's with Toyota, to actually produce some type of thing for the astronaut to get around on the moon. So that might be neat.
Well, I think there were some Japanese astronauts, weren't there?
Yes, there are some Japanese
Yes.
astronauts. In fact, I think there's one in the International Space Station right now as we were talking. So,
That's great. But
um,
I'm excited about it. I just see all these possibilities, and it'll be such a, I think, a better living condition on the moon that can be provided as opposed to on the space station. And then, of course, my biggest thing is I believe in emergency procedures, and that's why I suggested having an emergency space shuttle on the moon that might be ready to just take off at any time. And whether it's operated by us or Russia or different astronauts, well, somebody would always be up there who'd be able to operate that space shuttle. And say something happens to where we send somebody out in space and that particular rocket has a problem. Now we can have an emergency shuttle, maybe have a faster takeoff and a faster chance of getting help.
yeah, that's a good idea about having some resources in space for those emergency issues.
If we ever get to Mars, we can have like a little space shuttle from, I would say, suggest set up space stations, from here and then closer to Mars and things in that order. And you take the space shuttle from one station to the other. And then, of course, if someone gets in trouble or at the space station, you're ready to take off in the emergency shuttle.
Hmm.
We're here, it would take days. Yeah, at the very least, it would still take days to set up and get organized. And I mean, they could be up there in trouble for 2 weeks before we ever even got anywhere near them.
That's true. Have you heard of SpaceX?
Yes, definitely.
Oh, what do you know about them?
Well, I just know that they're pretty much right up the road from us. I'm in Georgetown, north of Austin,
Oh,
and
okay.
they do a lot of the space exploration, and they sent someone up to the space station, or sent some people up to the space station, and they took recently they took some supplies up there.
Yeah, it's amazing the things they've been doing. But Elon Musk, the founder of SpaceX, you know what his long-term vision is?
No, I don't.
Um, a self-sustaining uh, city on Mars with like 1 million people in it.
Wow, but I could see that. I really could.
And he'd like to do it in his own lifetime. So, one reason why space travel has been so expensive is we spend like 2 years building the spacecraft to use it for 2 minutes and then throw it away and have to build another one. So the reusability of the Falcon 9 rockets that SpaceX has really reduced the cost and frequency,
Hmm.
but it's not 100% reusable. The second stage is thrown away each time, and it doesn't lift all that much. But SpaceX is in the process of building the Starship down in Boca Chica, Texas. I don't know if you've heard about this,
No, I didn't. I don't think so. Not that one.
but it's a huge spacecraft that could carry 100 people at a time to space. It'd be
Wow.
100% reusable, which means that it'd be the cheapest spacecraft ever to launch. So the most
Uh-huh.
powerful and the cheapest to launch. And he's building a factory that's right now producing one of these a month, but he plans to after, I mean, they're currently doing some testing. They have a lot of testing to go through, but he wants to make it so eventually it's producing two of these a week, and each one would be capable of doing 3 trips a day. So if you could just imagine what level of like the order of magnitude change that would have in terms of our access to space.
Yes. Wow. That's something.
Yeah, and it's actually being built. I mean, it's not just PowerPoint slides. I mean, there's like metal down there that's being
Wow.
turned into these things, and
No, I hadn't heard that. I didn't know that. That's great.
so and
I'm
as
I'm I'm just excited about the first Walmart on Mars.
yeah, or the Amazon delivery might be
Yeah,
another
there
thing.
you go.
Which
That'll
brings
be
up
the next one.
another question. Did you know that Jeff Bezos, the founder of Amazon, has a space company?
No, I didn't.
Yeah, it's called Blue Origin.
Oh,
Yeah, and they have a peculiar funding model. Jeff sells about $1 billion a year of his Amazon stock to pay for it. So,
wow.
but Jeff has a different vision than Elon. He's like, Earth is like the most special place in the solar system, and he wants to actually develop space to protect the Earth, to move like energy production into space and mining and manufacturing and save the Earth for humans and life and that type
Yes.
of thing. I was wondering what you thought about that vision.
I think that's great because, again, I think we need to be moving forward and looking at new ways of producing different types of energy, and looking at all the ways that energy is currently being wasted. And of course, the smog and things in that order. But I think by going out in space and viewing everything from space, that side of it, I think it's going to be a little bit more intense, and we're going to start being able to come up with more ideas and ways to get people to start saving the earth, so to speak.
You mentioned the internet earlier,
Yes.
and I keep thinking back to the 1990s and how
Yes.
transformative that decade was. I mean, I think in 1990 you would find an easier time explaining the rocket equation or why astronauts float than you would email or how to do online shopping. Like you go up to somebody in 1990 and you say, "Hey, you'll be able to go to your computer and buy anything." I think they would have no clue what you're talking about.
They would throw the Sears catalog at your head and say, "Wake up! You can't do that."
That's what this is for. Yeah, this 2 hour delivery or getting it the next day. It's just amazing what you can do now.
The only problem is, though, is I think the newer generation is too absorbed with the internet, and I think we should be teaching classes or something, or give them some kind of an insight on how things were done on the old way, because it's just like you building a house. You always start with the foundation. You don't start with the second floor and go down or something on that order. And I think with the internet, it just seems to me that's what we're doing. We're starting at the higher level when we should be really teaching a lot of the basics and how things were done. And that way, I think people could really understand and come up with a lot more ways of doing things if they understood the almost root cause, this from the very start, how it was to what it is now.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. I mean, because right now, pretty much the answer to every question is Google it. Don't think about it. Don't try to figure it out. Just type it into Google and see what comes up.
Well, I saw the one show I was watching was really hilarious. The father comes in and he sees his daughter doing a crossword puzzle with an ink pen, and he's so impressed and amazed. And she says, "Oh yeah, there's nothing to it. Hey Alexa, what's a 5-letter word for?"
That's funny.
I know, it was hilarious.
I kind of, unfortunately, really sad and true.
Yes.
Yeah, how do we have a great future without thinkers and inventors and explorers and people that are creating stuff?
Yes.
Um,
I just think we need to make sure people know, especially the newer generation needs to know the basics, how things used to be, so that they can go on to making things even better.
yeah, I mean, it's like you have these stories about how you have these automated societies where everything is
Yes.
done for the people, and then the machines stop working and the complete collapse because nobody knows what to do.
Well, the Clint Eastwood movie, it was Cowboys in Space or something, and the landing and everything was going to be done by computers. And they kept saying, well, what if the computer fails? Well, sure enough, it did, but there were people on board that knew how to do it. Whereas if they wouldn't have been on board, the computer would have failed and they would have crashed, because without the automation, no one knew how to properly land the space shuttle.
Yeah, and that's also one other thing to keep in mind is we talk about going to Mars, and I think we're physically able to create a ship that can take people to Mars and land them there. But one thing that surprises me as I learn more and more about the space program is how dependent the astronauts are for the ground support teams. Like
Yes.
every time they have a problem, they don't actually solve the problem themselves. They communicate about it down here, and then there's like hundreds of engineers that go to work solving it, send them the
Correct.
solution, and that requires a lot of interactivity that just isn't possible as we start moving further and further away from the Earth.
But it's just like the internet. Every so often, the internet goes down and it fails. Well, what happens if you're in an emergency situation and your ground team can't communicate with you?
Oh, exactly. I mean, you go to places
So it's a problem.
like restaurants and stores, and their credit card system goes down. Can they take an order? That's that problem too. I think is it my internet or yours? Can you hear me? That's working.
Yes, I lost internet.
Oh, no
That was
worries.
so hilarious. We were just talking about that, and then all of a sudden it dropped. And at first I thought you were just joking around because I could see your face, and you weren't doing anything. And I thought maybe you were joking about it, and I didn't realize that no, I had actually lost the internet connection.
No worries. No worries. I figured it must be something like that. So,
Yes.
so that works out well. But I mean, just coming back to the 1990s and the internet, it's amazing how transformative that decade was in terms of communications and computing and just
Yes.
society. I personally feel that with all the developments that are happening with Blue Origin, SpaceX, and a host of other companies, that the 2020s might be just as transformative for space exploration. And I was just wondering if you had any sense of that, or if you think that might be a little bit overly optimistic.
No, I think you're right, because the millennials, they're coming, basically into having a lot of control, and I think they have a lot more foresight and a lot more interest in exploration than the older folks like myself had in the past.
I think
So
it's
it seems
definitely.
every generation seems to be more and more interested in, hey, what's out there? We really would need to figure it out.
Yeah, I think it's my experience has been it's mixed. I remember right before the COVID lockdown, I interviewed a mother and a daughter. The mother, I think it was about my age, and the daughter was about my son's age. And I asked them the question, would you be interested in traveling to space? And the mother says, yes, certainly. And the daughter says, no, I don't think so. And the mother was really surprised by that. So it was kind of a
Wow.
cute little interview.
Yes, that was interesting.
But talking about that, I mean, would you be willing to travel to space if it was safe and affordable?
I'm not sure. I'd be really interested in finding out what they found out there and seeing the pictures and everything else. But as far as actually basically strapping my butt to a huge gas tank or fuel tank and going up in the air, I don't know if I could do that. And it wouldn't be going up. I mean, the going up would be fine. I wouldn't have any problems. But it would be the coming back down in, I think, would just terrify me, because I have this problem with falling. Okay, I'm not afraid of heights, but I have this fear of falling, and I even have a hard time going off a diving board into a pool. And you're only talking about 3 feet to the water. So I don't know. I don't know if I'd be able to do that.
There's this other project that's in the works called Space Hero. It's going to be a reality TV show contest. It's going to be global. And it's going to have the contestants competing for a chance to go to the International Space Station for 10 days. And
Uh-huh.
I was wondering what you thought about projects like that.
Oh, I think that's fantastic. And the more they do stuff like that, the more it will start getting other people thinking, and the more it'll be advertised, and the more people that are interested, the more funding you usually end up getting.
Yeah, I feel like, back in the 60s, everybody thought that the personal space travel was just around the corner. And now I think everybody's convinced they'll never travel to space. And I think that lack of ability to participate is really dampen enthusiasm.
Well, the other problem too is a lot of people look at it as, okay, so you're shot up in a rocket up into space, you float around, everything's kind of dark or black out there, you might see a couple of asteroids or something, and then you come back, and it's, okay, I spent how much money just to do this? Whereas, if you want to send some people up to go on the moon and, maybe just walk around for even just a couple of hours, in the space suits, or be inside and kind of look out and say, wow, I was on the moon, and then get them back in the spaceship and come right back. I think they'd be really willing to do that. I think the money would not be an obstacle.
Yeah, exactly. And it's all about getting scale. If you're able to send 100 people at a time to the moon and keep them all safe and get them back, maybe the tickets, $1 million or $2 million each, whereas, right now it's not even possible. And then
Yes.
eventually you're able to send 500 at a time, and the price comes down to like 750,000 each. And then eventually you're sending them so often, and you have all the infrastructure in place, and maybe it becomes the cost of a small house, and
Yes.
it could be something.
And then too, you have to figure how much training are these people willing to go through before, they're allowed to go up into space, because you're not going to just be able to basically board a plane and go.
Yeah, I mean,
it's like skydiving. You don't just get on the plane and jump out. you get a hopefully extensive amount of training before they let you do anything, and then they usually have you tethered to somebody else going out of the plane.
Have you ever gone skydiving?
No, my husband has.
Okay.
I'm
I'm
terrified. I'm tired because I can't do the fall. I'm terrified of it. I've flown the planes, but I can't do the skydiving.
oh,
And now that wasn't bad. I mean, in a small plane, the landing, and even in bigger planes, landing is not a problem. But you're talking straight down with the space stations. I mean, the spacecraft.
oh, exactly. But you've flown like a Cessna or another
Yes,
small plane? Do you have
yes.
your pilot's license?
No, I don't.
Oh, okay. It
I,
was like
I
a discovery flight or something?
No, I took lessons for quite a while, and I was, really close to completing. And I even got to, because I had so many visual sighting classes canceled, they taught me how to instrument fly. But then I ended up moving to another state, and I was really short on funds, and I never did go back and finish and get my pilot's license.
Did you do your first solo?
No, no, I did not. I was, like I said, I was really close, and I did I flew and landed, by myself, but there was a person there in, in the other seat, so I wasn't up there by myself or anything.
Yeah, I was in the process of trying to get my license before the COVID lockdowns as well, and I
Uh-huh.
was still doing the dual instruction, trying to master the landings. It's uh it's difficult, especially when you start seeing small birds flying in your path of travel. You're like, ah.
Well, they had this was years ago when I was doing this, and they had me doing maneuvers at 600 feet. Now, 600 feet is low. There are trees in the western United States that are probably over 600 feet.
Oh, indeed. Yeah.
But yeah, that got scary, and then doing those drops and stuff. I mean, I had a hard time with it, but I did it.
That's pretty neat. Well,
Yeah.
Patrice, I really appreciate your time. Is there anything that you wanted to talk about that we didn't get to?
Well, I guess was wondering how your feeling is about aliens, other people from other planets and things in that order, because I'm thinking a universe that's this big, it would be ludicrous to think that there weren't any other life forms. And I'm thinking that the other life forms, they probably maybe don't need air and water, to survive. Whereas people are saying, oh, no, if you don't have that, there couldn't possibly be any other life forms. But I just wonder how you're feeling as far as whether there are spaceships that maybe check out Earth, or, other, basically aliens from other planets out there.
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. You know, we've been observing other stars for long periods of time, and we've become quite good about detecting planets and characterizing planets around other stars. And we found, tens of thousands of planets around other stars. Some of them, are like Jupiter's are big Earths, and some of them are closer to the size of Earth. And we're working on trying to understand what kind of atmospheres these planets might have by looking at the light from the star going through the atmosphere and using spectroscopy to figure out the chemical composition of those atmospheres. Um,
Uh-huh.
and of course, we're listening out for any technological signals like radio signals or what have you from these other places, any type of indication
Uh-huh.
that there might be something alive, and there might even be something that's technologically advanced. But if you look at human history as being the only thing that we know about, for millions of years, we've not really made any type of kind of noises that would be detectable from great distances. It was really with the advent of radio that we really started kind of
Oh.
producing any type of radio waves that other systems would be able to detect. And
Mm-hmm.
that was what, maybe 130 years ago, 140 years ago.
Yes.
And so depending upon if somebody happens to be listening in our direction and that far away, would they even detect us? And also, with telecommunications, we're becoming better at being more direct and quieter and using less energy. And so it may be, another 50 years or so where even though we're using so much information technology and so much data transfer, that we're doing it in a way that's very efficient and directional, that we're actually not emitting any type of radio out into the rest of the universe as well. Um, After that time, it may be not possible to detect this either. So you have that issue. And the fact there's like billions and billions and billions of stars.
Yes.
I mean, it's really probably hard to find each other. I mean, I kind of imagine if you had two people in like the Galleria, how long would it take for them to find each other? If it was
Well,
only
that's
like two
okay. Good
people.
point. Okay, good point. Oh, and that I saw something where on the moon they think that it does have some type of an atmosphere, and it's comprised of, I think, like sodium and potassium or something on that order. Have you heard anything about that?
Yeah, I think there is some atmosphere that comes and goes, is very faint, but I've not heard anything about that in particular. I mean,
Oh,
most of it I think is, I mean, my understanding is that it's pretty much as near a vacuum as you can get. But I'm sure there's things that maybe kick up some debris from time to time, and since there's nothing to slow it down, you might have a little bit of something. You mentioned about the water that they found on the moon. I mean, that it's actually in these craters that have these permanently shadowed areas that have
yes.
accumulated water over, you know, millions and maybe a billion years. Um, and from what we can tell, it's so cold there that the water molecules just went in there, got frozen, and been kind of contained in that ice in this like minus 100 degree Celsius environment. Um, but yeah, I'm not entirely sure. I think there's a lot about the moon that we don't know. So
Mhm.
mm, I think
So
we'll
don't pack
know.
your bathing suit.
Well, we'll know a lot more. Yeah, bring your skates, not your bathing suit. We're going to have two U.S. companies that are landing probes on the moon this year. One is a Houston-based company called Intuitive Machines, and the other one's a
Hmm.
Pittsburgh-based company called Astrobotic. And
Oh,
they're landing equipment for NASA, but they're also landing equipment for other universities and companies and what have you. And I'm actually sending copies of the recordings I'm doing through the end of January um, on a little micro SD card that'll be on the Astrobotic moon landing. So you'll record this recording will get to go to the moon. So
wow, fantastic. Well, thank you. I hope I wasn't too off the wall.
no, not at all. Not at all. Yeah. I mean, if you talk to people in the 1800s about how they get to go into this building and get into this piece of equipment that would take them halfway around the world, they would not believe you at all.
That's true.
Well, thank you so much, and yeah, it'd be great to meet up sometime after this COVID situation gets behind
That'd be
us.
great. Yes, it would be really nice to get a lot of people, together and have like a little alumni type meeting, I guess you could say.
Oh, exactly. Well, good deal. Well, you have a good rest of your day.
You too. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.